If you're a small indie game dev and you're making your first game, then here are 7 tips to help you find players. So here's tip number 1, and that is to grab attention, appeal to a player's selfish needs. So players don't care about your cool art or story. They care about that your art or story and help them get immersed in your game so they can, forget about their stress and their boredom and their pain. Also, players don't care about your features or innovations. They care about that, your features are fun, challenging, and provide them, with surprises so they're not always bored. And the game is basically a portal or a vessel so that players, avoid boredom, get immersed, have fun, and be entertained. They use your game as a way to give them something fun and challenging to do. So if you want to start finding players, then your marketing needs to be focused on the selfish needs of your potential customers. So then how do you exactly do this? Well, next time you create any content for your game, so it could be, a post on social media or update on your Steam page or, any video on YouTube or TikTok, you got to ask yourself, how does this benefit the player? And I know this isn't an easy question, but the idea here is to shift your mind away from, you and put the spotlight on the player's selfish needs. So for example, say you're updating an animation for your game and you want to post an update about it. Well, instead of just talking about you and what you did, explain in detail how your new update benefits the player in some way. So maybe the new animation solves a problem with visual clarity that you've seen in other games like this. Or maybe the new animation helps the player get more immersed in your game. Or maybe the animation makes combat feel more, weighty or chunky, right? Because animation isn't just cosmetics. It's about adding that, satisfying feeling of combat, right? Again, all about immersion. And animation is just one example. Every system in your game is there to add some sort of immersion or fun or challenge in your game, right? So you need to specifically explain that, how your system relates back to your players' wants and needs. So anytime you create content about your game, ask, how does this benefit the player? Because remember, you need to appeal to the player's selfish need if you want to grab attention. All right, here's tip number 2, and that is you need a step that converts into wish lists. So most game marketing sounds and looks like this. Hey gamer, look at my features, look at my art. Cool, hey? Now give me your wish list. Well, this doesn't work. Let me explain why. Okay, so the whole idea with wish list is that the more you have, the better chances are that they'll convert into sales, right? Because this works because it's important to get a player to make, small commitments before you ask them to make a big commitment, right? So in other words, small commitments like, getting a wish list will convert better than if you just ask for the sale, right away. Again, small commitments over time lead to bigger results. So think about it this way. On the first date with somebody, you don't start making plans to go on a big vacation or to move in with each other, right? No, there are small little commitments first, and there's always small steps that lead to bigger results and bigger commitments over the long term. And that's why getting, a wish list before you asking a player to buy your game is important, because when a person makes a small commitment, there's a need to act consistently. And if you've ever read the book Influence, you know what I'm talking about. But here's the insight that most game devs miss. It's the same thing when asking for a wish list. Before you can ask a player for their wish list, the player needs to take a small step before making that commitment. And this is why it's so hard for small game studios who have no momentum to, start building wish lists consistently, because for the player, it's too big of a commitment for them at that moment, right? There needs to be a few steps before that, before they take the next step. So how do you get that small commitment that, converts into a wish list? So let me show you that in the next tips. Okay, so tip number 3 is the best marketing never asks for anything. The best marketing offers value. Okay, what's the most valuable thing to a potential customer? Is it screenshots? Is it trailers? Is it professional looking Steam pages? Is it devlogs? Is it posts on social media? Nobody cares. Well, okay, if you're a big studio with lots of people, anticipating your next release, then people do care, right? But if you're a small indie game dev making your first game, none of that content is valuable to the player yet. So what is the most valuable thing to a player right now, especially if you're a small indie game dev, without any momentum? Well, when I help clients market their game, the first thing I do is research and, reach out to potential customers. And what's the number one thing potential customers I talk to ask me? Well, they always ask me, can I play the demo? And I send them trailers, I send them, the Steam page store link, I send them the gameplay footage, but no one cares about that content. They only want to play the demo. And that's because something tangible like a demo is worth, 1,000 times more than screenshots and trailers and all that stuff, especially if you're a small indie game dev and nobody knows about you and no one's ever seen your game before. And I know this isn't easy to, have a polished demo, a kick-ass demo right now. I know that, this tip is a big ask. And I know that most game devs don't even bother because they would rather keep posting on social media, hire somebody to make a professional trailer or put up a Steam page and hope that they get some traffic. But I talk to hundreds of potential customers every week, and majority of the people always ask, can I see the demo? And remember in tip number 2, how I talked about how you need a step that converts into wish list? Well, this is your step. By having a demo ready to give to a potential customer, it allows them to take that small step, basically a no risk, no hassle commitment before they do wish list your game. Plus, a wish list has no value to them, to the player, until they had that small taste of your game. And once they play that demo and they love your game, then this is how your wish list value goes up. Again, the best marketing doesn't ask for anything, it offers value. And a wish list alone has zero value to a player. But your number one marketing asset right now that has a lot of potential in increasing the value of your wish list is your demo. But then the question is, how do you get more people to download your demo in the first place? So let's talk about that next in tip number 4. And that is, this is real money you might lose, so it's time to get serious. So the probability of success, finding a customer is low if you just do what, most game devs do. And what they usually do consists of, putting up a Steam page and hope for organic traffic. Get a fancy trailer and put it up on YouTube and hope for, some traffic. Post on, content on social media and hope that people like and share. And they hand out keys to YouTubers and press and hope that they play and talk about the game. But hope isn't a strategy, and posting stuff up and hoping other people and other platforms will, get you customers will usually fail. And it usually fails because almost every game dev does this kind of mediocre marketing. Again, don't get me wrong. If you're a bigger studio and you have some customers and you already have some momentum, then yes, this marketing helps because you already, like I said, have momentum. But when you don't have that momentum, then you can't do what everyone else is doing. You have to do something exceptional that most game devs will never do. So if you really want to get this right, if you don't want to lose money, time, energy in this project, if you are serious about, building a studio that will let you become a full-time game dev, then you must talk to customers. And that's the number one key. Go find your tribe, go talk to them. You'll get more wish lists by spending 15 minutes a day talking to players than you ever will posting on social media and talking to other game devs, because you want your wish list to be full of qualified potential customers and not just other game devs or family or friends. Okay, so how do you build this momentum yourself, right? How do you find that your tribe, and what do you ask them? And then how do you get them to follow you and then wishlist your game? Like how I said, do those step-by-step, commitments. So let's work on that in the next tip. So tip number 5 is think of your customers as business friends. So if you want value from a potential customers, you have to also provide value back. And so what I mean is, wish lists, followers, sales are very valuable to you, right? But in a relationship, it's also an exchange of values, both back and forth. So if you're just one-sided and expect to get wish lists just because you have a Steam page up or cool screenshots and a flashy trailer, well, that is not enough value for the player, especially if they don't know about you or have never heard about your game before. Remember, your customer is an individual person who wants to find a game they can trust that will be fun, entertaining, won't be boring, and help them forget about their problems and stresses in their life, right? And they don't want to connect with some indie game studio. They want to connect with another human being who will give them attention. And this is why it's such a big deal when, big execs like Phil Spencer and producers like Todd Howard take the time to talk to gamers, right? They'll do AMAs, they'll do interviews, they'll be as accessible to the public as they can be. And this works because players don't want to feel like they're dealing with a company that only cares about shareholders and all that, corporate stuff, right? They want to know that they're dealing with another person that actually cares about, their life and their, fun and their entertainment. So this is why it's so important for you to personally reach out and talk to potential customers. So how do you do this? Well, it's very simple. Whatever your genre is, there's always a community or a forum somewhere online for it. And it can be on Reddit, it can be on Discord, or even a website. Even WhatsApp and TikTok, facilitate, community engagement through, their features, right? But remember, you're not there to promote your game. You're there as a fan. And as you participate in these communities, you're going to build some relationships. And then when you build that trust with, those people, those users, and then trust in that community, then when you do self-promote, it'll be more organic. And, those people that you've built relationships with will want to support you, will play your demo, will wish list your game. And these are actual players. They're not just, friends or family or other game devs. They're actual potential customers, right? Because, you're in the same genre that they like. You're basically fans of the same genre. And is this tedious? Yes. Is this, time consuming? For sure. And are there devs who made games like Hotline Miami, Vampire Survivors, Stardew Valley? Did these, devs devs do this stuff that I'm talking about? No. But guess what? There's thousands of other devs with very good, high quality, fun games on Steam right now that are basically getting zero visibility and zero interest. And they did the same marketing strategy as all those other games, but yet they're still not getting any attention. Because to be successful in marketing your game, you got to be creative. And the only way to become creative is to talk to your own customers, because that way you'll find that appeal that, is specifically for your game, and then you use that appeal to help you market your game. But if you follow what other game devs did, it's not going to work because their appeal is very different from yours. So you got to dig, you got to discover why your players like your game, and then you got to use that in your marketing. And remember, there's real money on the line. Failure is certain if you just do what everyone else does, and what everyone else is doing is mediocre at best. So you got to do uncommon things if you want uncommon results. Okay, let's talk about how to get momentum. So tip number 6 is getting momentum is not the same as having momentum. Okay, so here's an analogy. A rocket taking off, the ground will burn 80 or more of its fuel just to lift off the ground, right? But once it's in orbit, its fuel consumption is more efficient and it uses less energy to keep, in flight and in orbit. So it's the same thing with your game studio, right? If you want to get it off the ground, you will burn more time, energy, and effort to get that momentum. But once you get that momentum, the less work you'll have to do. But the problem is marketing strategies like having a professional Steam page, posting on social media, trailers, screenshots, etc. These activities do not build momentum. Yes, they help you greatly when your game has taken off the ground and you're getting, some followers and wish lists. But alone, this is not how to build momentum. The only way to build momentum that I know of is those 3 ways. So basically creating content that focuses on players' selfish needs. Number 2 is having a polished demo ready. And number 3 is talking to potential customers, building relationships, and giving them that demo once you've built that trust. And yes, these activities will take 80% of your time, your energy, and your effort. They do suck and they're boring, but that's the only way I know how to get momentum. And again, there are games that don't follow any of this advice. They go viral for, because they have a cool demo and YouTubers pick it up and the dev doesn't have to put in that much effort. But if you've already tried all this stuff and nothing is working, then this is your strategy how to get your, game off the ground. And the thing is, once you get that momentum and word of mouth spreads and you have a bigger following and you have more wish lists, then that momentum builds up even more, right? It's a snowball. Because when you do have all that momentum, YouTubers will want to play your game because now you have an audience, right? And that means social proof. And social proof means that your audience can be their audience. So now they're really interested in your game. And same on Steam. If there's a lot of wish lists going on and a lot of engagement in your community hub, their algorithm is going to pick you up and, showcase your game more. And I need to do some more research because I'm not sure if that's exactly how it works, but it makes sense that if, people are engaging with your game and wish listing, then Steam is going to see that, yes, this game isn't dead. I'm going to, show it off more in those tabs. And instead of you posting on social media, people will do it for you and the word will, reach more of your target audience because it's not just you posting, right? Now you have a fan base, helping you. But it all starts with those 3 activities: creating content that focuses on a player's selfish needs, having a polished demo ready, and talking to potential customers, building relationships, and then giving your demo away once you build that trust in a community. Again, it's these small steps that build to bigger results over time in the long term. But most game devs think in short-term hacks, like, posting on social media or, putting up trailers and stuff like that, right? These one-time activities don't work if you don't have momentum. And it has to be you that builds up that momentum. You have to be persistent. You have to go out there and find players. You have to, build those relationships. You got to take some self-accountability because no YouTuber or platform or, press is going to do it for you unless you already have that momentum. Okay, tip number 7 is make your game name stick. So I have to be honest, and a lot of game devs I help don't have a very good, memorable game name. Yeah, some of the names are kind of cool, but a good name that sticks in the mind, of a player goes a long way in terms of helping you build momentum and making sure that players don't forget about you. So let me explain. So there's 3 approaches to coming up with a good name that sticks. So approach number 1 is use less than 3 syllables because often the simpler the name, the easier it is to remember. So for example, Doom, Rust, Elatro, Valheim, Risk of Rain, Slay the Spire, No Man's Sky, Cuphead, Kenshi. These names all have less than 3 syllables, so they're really simple to say, and if it's simple to say, then it's simple to remember. Okay, approach number 2 is rhythm, rhyme, and alliteration. So these names have a, kind of a sing-song, right? A flow to them that makes it easy to remember. So for example, Red Dead Redemption, Vampire Survivors, Guilty Gear, World of Warcraft, Donkey Kong Country. These names are easy to remember because it's the sounds you remember and not the actual words. Okay, approach number 3 is tell me what I get to do. So then there are game names that literally spell out what the player should expect in the game. So for example, Minecraft, Farming Simulator, Football Manager, Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider, Hitman, Dead by Deadlight. With these names, players can imagine what they'll be doing in the game without even, seeing what the game is all about, right? So for example, if you made a game and no one knows about you and you have a name that spells out what you do in the game, that's a huge benefit because that's easy to remember for the player. And of course, there are other examples where highly successful games don't even follow any of these rules or approaches, but as a small game dev, you want to take any advantage you can so that a player will remember you, right? And if you have a hard name with too many syllables, then you'll have to work even harder for branding and getting people to remember you and put a lot more effort into marketing. All right, if you want more free marketing tips and if you're a small game dev making your first game, then please subscribe and like, and because your support helps a lot. That's it, my friend. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name again is Dariusz, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.